It's a little hard for me to stand for a long period of time.
Yeah, it's fine. All right, let's give it a shot. We'll have to throw this back.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, hi there. This is Dr. Ted Goldfinger for WineMDOnline.com. I'm sitting here with Don Miller, owner of the Adobe Guadalupe vineyards and bed and breakfast in the Guadalupe Valley outside of Ensenada. Don has an interesting story in that he's a past American banker who had a passion for wine and found the resources here and the natural resources here to develop a marvelous vineyard. I'm going to ask Don just to give a little story about how he came to this beautiful valley and how he came to begin the Adobe Guadalupe Vineyards and Winery.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted. We decided to, my dream was to grow grapes like everybody else. And we didn't realize it was going to be, when I retired, it was going to be in Mexico. And true, my wife and I got involved with an orphanage here in Baja, and we came down, and I had been in most of the wine growing areas of the world and didn't even realize, I lived in Southern California, but didn't even realize there was a wine area here. So we came down, I started tasting the wine and said, this is pretty good stuff. Where do they grow it? And somebody said, oh, we're in the Valley of the Guadalupe, and we were in Ensenada. And I said, do I have to fly there? He said, no, it's over the hill. So we came over here. We ended up introducing ourselves to people in the wine industry. We saw that the knowledge and the facilities and the equipment and that was very up to date. And as I mentioned, the quality was very good. So we said, why don't we see about the possibility of acquiring some property here? So we eventually did, and this was in 1997. And we built this Adobe in 98, started construction and planted our first grapes in 98 and moved here in 99. So we've been here 10 years now. And we think it's amazing what's developed in this 10-year period of time where the quality of the wine has improved significantly from all of the wineries. We've gone from 11 wineries to over 50 wineries. And the recognition of the quality of the we're going through this renaissance of quality led by our consulting winemaker Hugo da Costa, and as a result people are now starting to recognize, but most of the Mexican wine is sold in Mexico.
What type of challenges do you have trying to get the Americans to taste the wine, bring the wine back to America and experience Mexican wine from Baja?
Well, very little wine is sold in the United States from Mexico. Virtually all of us sell our wine in Mexico, and so there's very little sold. Americans have been coming down to visit the wine area, largely in Southern California. Unfortunately, in the last year, because of the concern about the violence, they haven't been coming down. So most of the people who visit here are people in the from Mexico and from the mainland area of Mexico. And there's just very little wine sold in the United States, so it's not well known. But for the amount of wine all of us make, it's a good enough market in Mexico.
For the most part, Mexican food, Mexican beverages, you think of more greasy foods and beer as being the natural beverage and food type for Mexico. Well, I found in my little jaunt down here that that's completely false. At least it could be. That there is fine food down, certainly in Baja, and that there is an appreciation for wine. How is the local people perceive wine? Is it part of a normal diet? This is truly a Mediterranean environment down here. Is it the Mediterranean lifestyle, or is it just a fad that's going by?
No, this is definitely a change. There's been an increased culinary interest in this area, along with the wine. And so most of the chefs are now doing the Mediterranean style cuisine, olive oil cooking, the fresh ingredients, and that's quite different from the perception that people have of the style of Mexican food. But you add that Mexican aspect to it, the chilies, and even in this area where we have a lot of fish, shellfish and that, adding that particular ingredients to it gives it a Mexican flavor to it. And this is huge. I mean, but most of that is recognizable in Mexico City, where most of the cuisine is.
Want to bring your wife in? Maybe?
Sure.
Just put it to the chair and we can add.
True? True. You're being added in.
Can we? Come on. I'm going to ask you another question in the meantime. Can you just tell me? Hold on. We're gonna bring. Hi. I'm Ted Goldfinger.
Ted Goldfinger.
Nice to meet you.
Are you a
Doctor
doctor?
Ted.
I am.
Are you a cardiologist?
Yes.
I had trouble with my heart all night.
Oh, really? Then we'll have to talk about that.
No.
Can you put a chair next to Don? So
It's just because I knew you were here. That's all it was.
I appreciate that. And you're Dutch.
I'm Dutch.
Yeah, my wife is the one that she spent a good portion of her childhood growing up in Holland.
In Soest, no?
Soest, yeah.
That's what
Her dad was in the Air Force in Soesterberg.
Oh, yeah.
You familiar?
Of course,
Yeah, we've gone back there several times.
It was loud.
We've gone back there several times, and there's a beautiful pannekuchen house in Soest that we go to. The Schmeckel, it's called. The Schmeckel pannekuchen house. Let's see. Speck, make sure that you're in it.
In the picture, yeah. Yeah, it's right up there.
Yep, she's fine. So let's try this one more. I'll just start and we can edit the thing. This is Dr. Ted Goldfinger for winemdonline.com. I'm here with Don and True Miller from the Adobe Guadalupe vineyards and hacienda in the Guadalupe Valley. And we were talking with Don, and now his wife True has joined us. Thank you very much. One of the questions I'd like to ask you, we've had a chance to taste some of your wines last night. Really spectacular wines that I think would be completely unexpected for the American tourist to come down here. And what, outside of your own passion for wine, what's your inspiration for making the wines down here and crafting the style that you have?
Well, I think from the standpoint of this, this is to show what this area can produce, that Mexico can produce some outstanding wines. Because the perception is that Mexico doesn't produce good wine, it produces cerveza and tequila. And we did a presentation at the, what's the famous event for all the, in Bordeaux, and this was in New York. What's
the Spectator?
The Van Expo?
The Vin Expo. Vin Expo. So True and I were in New York for one of the Vin Expos, and we had the Mexican wine table, and some reporter for Time magazine came by and she said, "Oh, your wines are very good." And then she wrote an article and it said, "Beyond Cerveza." It said the surprise of the Vin Expo were the Mexican wines, because we're all known for cerveza and tequila as being the premier. And it's a real challenge to show, particularly the Americans, that the quality of the Mexican wine is world class. And also to understand what the terroir of Mexico is, not just it's Bordeaux or it's Rhone or whatever it is. That's the explanation. But this is a different wine area, and the quality of the terroir and the unusual aspects of the being close to the ocean and the hot weather, the microclimate really is contributing to, we think, the opportunity to make good wine. So we hope to improve that.
Are wines being produced elsewhere in Mexico, or is Baja pretty much the quintessential wine region in Mexico?
Baja produces about 90% of the wine. There's really three other areas that produce a little bit of wine, including Paris, Coahuila, where the oldest winery in all of the Americas is located, called Casa Madera. That was established in 1597. And those people that, Mexican winery in 1597? So, and then also in Querétaro, Frixinetta is there, and in Aguascaliente. And there's some little small areas, but this really is the center of the American, or excuse me, the Mexican wine history.
We talked, and you touched upon the renaissance of wine here in Mexico. What do you think is driving that, outside of the big cities in Mexico demanding greater quality? What's making we've had a chance to visit, we talked about last night, some of the small producers. What's driving them here? What's making them invest their fortunes into these small vineyards to try to push the envelope?
To improve the quality. Quality is the name of the game, and to prove that this area can produce good wines.
What are your greatest challenges in producing wine down here? We talked a little bit about water, and we talked about salinity of the soil. I mean, those are two things I think that have impressed me as being challenges. How do you deal with that? And does it make the wine what it is? Does it give it a certain character?
Well, the water is the biggest concern, the availability of the water, because you know, if we don't have water, we don't produce grapes. So that is, and we're working, the Mexican government is working on trying to bring a aqueduct with reclaimed water from Tijuana here, which would help, because we're dependent really on rainfall. And secondly, the salinity in the soil makes it very difficult on certain of our grape varietals, such as Syrah and Merlot and those particular grape varietals. So we're changing that. We're putting a different rootstock in that is more resistant to the salinity.
True. I'd like to ask you a question. You've been involved in charities down here, and also involved with the wine community here, in growing the wine community. Can you talk a little bit about what the wine community is like as a whole and how they organize? I know there's a big fiesta de vendimia here, and it's something that many wine tourists, connoisseurs, enthusiasts should know about. So I'm going to pass this to you.
And True was president 2 years.
I can tell you all about the lifestyle, and my palate is not as good as Donald, so you asked Donald the correct questions. Mine is more the lifestyle and living in Mexico and helping people, helping the country, and being part of it, which is probably the best. Like you mentioned, the Fiestas de la Vendimia are the first 2 weeks in August, and people usually think that it's around the harvest, and it is, but you know, sometimes we don't know exactly when the harvest is, so we need to come up with some definite dates, and we do. So we start pretty much the first Friday in August with the muestra, which are all the new wines of the year, and that's it in Ensenada at the Riviera, which is a beautiful building from the from long ago, and has marvelous gardens. And so in those gardens we will show our new wines. We get a couple of thousand people the first night to try that, many Americans and many Mexicans, of course. And then for 2 weeks, it's really 3 weekends and 2 weeks, every night, might not always be in Ensenada or in the Valley. We also have a night in Tijuana, we have a night in Mexicali, and a night in Tecate, where a vineyard will have an event. So we have jazz, we have classical music, we have tango, we have, you name it, I mean, ballet, together with the wines. And of course, the evenings are beautiful then. The weather during the day is very hot, but you probably know how the climate cools down at night. And they're really wonderful, wonderful events. We, at Adobe Guadalupe, have the most formal event. We do a cena de gala, a gala dinner, where we, Donald had this incredible idea of asking our friends, the other winemakers and owners of wineries, to basically give us their wines that they wanted to give, and then 2 of the famous winemakers in the valley, it usually changes, but Ura Costa is always one of them, mix these different wines. So you can have a bottle of Montechanique with Adobe Guadalupe and Vinistera in one bottle, which is, of course, is unique. And we have a huge auction, a wine auction about that. and where the money goes to charities. This year it will be again. Last year we started giving scholarships for young people in the Valley in biology, enology, and agronomy. And that was such a success that we'll do it again. And we'll work together with UABC, which is the university in Ensenada. So that's really, those are really wonderful things. And more people know about it. We get about, how many thousands of people do we get?
We get 30,000.
30,000 people during the Vendimia. So we're very proud of our Fiestas de la Vendimia.
So just like many other wine communities, the communities down here in the Guadalupe Valley share a common passion for wine, for food, for health, and for community, it seems like. No different than you'd find in small communities in France, in Italy, in the United States per se, and elsewhere. So this is a really exciting area for people to come to the Renaissance. I can tell you that that you can actually feel the Renaissance going on right around you. So I thank you for your hospitality and inviting us down and letting us spend time here and tasting your wines and enjoying the great food that this area has to offer. Just have you, why don't you just make an invitation for people to come visit? We'll end it all ourselves.
Not only we would like you to come every year because we really need you. And in order for this to be much more vibrant, we need the Americans to come back. Please, we know how difficult it is in Tijuana right now, but you can come around Tijuana and you can come to the Valle de Guadalupe, where really you will have a wonderful time. Please come.
Well, you have my positive vote. I would say it's a great place to come, and you should make the trip down here. It's easy, it's safe, and it's very, very rewarding.